time. It's getting hot outside. My watch, we're sitting at 91 degrees, and it's about to get, for the first time in a long time in this studio, because Dave keeps it at about 34 degrees. It is time for the trades.
Yes.
That will change your Sacramento Kings.
Multiple trades. One of them, how should I start this? I'll start with just a quick little blurb first. My intention here was to come up with a couple individual trades and try and figure out, hey, like, there's obviously Kuzma rumors. There's, we heard Zach LaVine stuff. We've heard Brandon Ingram stuff. We've heard Mikal Bridges things and all that stuff. So trying to like actually do the work of figuring out what could these trades possibly look like. And as I was doing the individual ones, a thing I quickly came to realize is, you do these trades, and I'll just use the Kyle Kuzma one, for example. You do Kyle Kuzma for Kevin Huerter and Davion Mitchell, and we'll say we'll just throw the 13th pick in there, or a future first-round pick in there. The problem becomes then the Kings lineup is, and this is all assuming, as everyone has in all these mock drafts, Malik Monk isn't signing, because I don't think you can.
Right.
I think you assume he's not, and if he is here, that's of course awesome. So then the problem becomes, if you trade Huerter, you trade Mitchell, then your lineup is missing that starting shooting guard. Unless, and we might talk about it later, like unless Keon Ellis is your starting shooting guard, if you're okay with that, if you feel like you have the depth to overcome that. But I think a starting lineup of Fox, Keon, Keegan, Kuzma, and Sabonis is good, but yet I still feel like we still need to upgrade that Keon spot. Right. So essentially you're trading Kevin Huerter and Davion, but you're not replacing either of them. You're just changing, you're switching the problem. Of course, you still have Harrison Barnes. You now have forward depth where you used to have guard depth, and maybe you value that differently. But I say all this to say, I realize that if the Kings are going to make a Kuzma deal, it would make a lot of sense for that to not be the only deal that they make, because again, they still have this massive, massive gap that even if you don't trade the 13th pick, let's say you trade 28 or 29 or 30 or 27, whatever, I don't think you're going to pick if your intention, if you're going into the season saying that number 13 pick is going to be a starter for us, that's not good.
No.
And so I say all this to say, I think I realized the Kings, if they were to make a Kuzma trade, would do themselves a lot of favors by not having that be the only move they made. And with that, we come to this massive, mega, ultra blockbuster trade that I came up with. It's two independent deals that do kind of tie into each other. I don't know if you necessarily would have to do them in any specific order, if it could be months apart, if it could be, the same, all of it. And essentially it is the first trade with Washington for Kyle Kuzma. I think it's the one that makes the most sense. Even if the Kings don't make the second trade, I do just think a Kyle Kuzma trade makes a lot of sense for Sacramento, especially if 13 is going to be something that they're really interested in. Our good friend Matt George was talking with a Washington reporter the other day, and I talked with him yesterday to kind of get his vibe on what he thought the Washington's reporter vibe was. And essentially he said, I gave him two options. I said, you can either have Kevin Huerter and Chris Duarte and 13, or we can give you salary dumps and 13. And essentially the reporter said, I mean, I'll take Kevin Huerter. Definitely he's the better player, but salary dumps do intrigue me because Washington, they're not doing anything. They're not going anywhere. So I come up with this Kyle Kuzma. The Kings get Kyle Kuzma, and going back is Trey Lyles, who's 1 year left on, I believe 1 year left on his contract. It might be 2 years left on his contract. Davion Mitchell, who is on an expiring contract, but he is still a young player who's going to get more opportunity in Washington than he ever got in Sacramento. And maybe they like him and sign him moving forward.
Yeah, they're losing Tyus Jones.
They're losing Tyus Jones as well. They get Chris Duarte, and those are the players, Lyles, Mitchell, Duarte. I think all three of those are probably rotation players at the very least for Washington. So you're trading Kyle Kuzma, and at the very least, you're getting usable players. It's not like it's just a complete dump. And you're getting number 13. So then Washington has, I think, 11 and 13 in the draft, which does very much intrigue them. We've seen reports that Washington is interested in attaining another first-round pick. So then, again, the problem becomes the Kings, they would still have Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter to move on from. In theory, and you could maybe just stick here. Your lineup would then be Fox. You would have Kevin Huerter still at the 2. You would have Keegan Murray. You would have Harrison Barnes. You would have Kyle Kuzma. You would have Sabonis. I think that's pretty good.
Sure.
But I also just kind of feel like Washington might ask for Kevin Huerter and just say, look, like, this is great, but we do need some sort of thing to show our fan base. Kevin Huerter went to school in Maryland,
right?
Obviously a little bit of a homecoming after a pretty tough season that he had. But if I'm Monty McNair, I'm saying, look, we really want you to take this deal because I have this second deal ready to line up. And I kind of need the contracts of Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter to make this next deal done. This is where things become blockbustery. We heard reports last week that Zach LaVine is essentially Chicago might just look to salary dump him, meaning essentially they might even tie in a first-round pick or extra incentive to get you to say yes to a Zach LaVine deal. I took that as give me Alex Caruso.
Of course.
And if you, especially if you're trading Davion, you have that hole at backup point guard. So I have Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, a young player. I didn't want it to be Keon. Honestly, I'm willing to move on from him if it gets the deal done, but I really like the thought of an Alex Caruso, Keon Ellis backup backcourt. I think that's incredibly exciting and fun. So I tried to keep him. I thought maybe Jalen Slauson would be exciting. Maybe you can throw in some other young guys.
Might need to go Colby Jones.
You might need to go Colby Jones. I don't know if the Kings need to throw in a first round pick. I don't. Maybe the Caruso thing makes it so Chicago's like, hey, we would like something back. But I if I'm Sacramento, I might be a little bit hesitant because I said, that's a really big contract that we're taking from Zach LaVine.
Right.
I don't know if I'm willing to do that. You should be happy with Kevin Huerter, who's a role player, Harrison Barnes, who's a role player for the next couple of years. You get a young player. Yeah, maybe we can work out a first-round pick if that's not enough. But then that gives you a Fox Caruso point guard lineup, LaVine, Keon at the 2. You still have Keegan. You have Kuzma, and you have Sabonis. And I just think that if you have that, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. You can maybe get 1 or 2 other guys in free agency. And again, this is not accounting for Malik Monk coming back either. If Malik Monk comes back, maybe you can play Zach LaVine at the 3. Maybe things start to become, if you even have a sense of Monk coming back, you might not even need to make this second move. But especially if Malik doesn't come back, I think essentially trading Lyles, Mitchell, Duarte, 1, potentially 2 first-round picks, Huerter, Barnes, and a young asset to get Kuz, LaVine, and Caruso makes sense to me.
Wow. Who's the starting? Give us your starting lineup.
Okay.
If this gets done.
So if that gets done, the starting lineup is Fox, Zach LaVine, Keegan Murray, Kyle Kuzma, Domantas Sabonis. You have Alex Caruso and Keon at the very least coming off the bench. Yeah.
Let's do
and
it.
You still probably have some version of the mid-level exception.
Monty McNair, if you're listening, hey, man.
Oh, man.
Chris is cooking.
Yeah. And all of those
You need
go
an
through.
assistant GM?
Yeah. All of those go through.
Wow.
Yes.
That is outstanding.
It was a little tough.
I'm worried. I think the
Wizards, Kings are taking on some money in these because
this is do it now.
Yeah.
This is you need a ball out now.
Yes.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Wizards try to get you. You're probably going to have to come off another pick.
You definitely might have to.
You're probably going to have to come off another pick.
It depends how they feel about Davion Mitchell, honestly. Because you could realistically convince them, hey, you guys don't have another point guard option. You're going to be playing Davion 25 to 30 minutes a night, and you might sign him moving forward. So maybe you could say, hey, that's the value of Davion was the 8th pick. Maybe he now has the value of a mid-20s pick or something.
Right. If you want to come off do you want a second round? We're not doing a first round. Do you want a second rounder?
Right. Yeah. We can do 2 seconds or whatever.
Yes.
3 seconds. We can maybe do pick swaps as well. I have that and maybe the Chicago side of things. The problem with the Chicago trade is we don't know what Chicago views as the salary dump.
Right.
What are they willing to part with in order to get rid of LaVine?
I know I looked up yesterday, Caruso's only making $9 million.
$9 million, and he isn't expiring. So maybe it is just a 1-year rental and then Caruso is going to have tons of suitors in the offseason, or maybe you give yourself a leg up on it and maybe he does sign with you long term.
The phone lines are blowing up. Manny Too Legit on the Sack Chat. Fox, Levine, Murray, Kuzma, and Domas would go crazy.
Crazy.
That would go crazy.
Defensively, we might need some commitment, but that's why the Caruso-Ellis backcourt, backup backcourt, sends me over.
The clamp
we got to
squad.
come up with something.
Yeah. Wow, Chris. That was nicely done.
Yeah.
That was nicely done. We get your thoughts on Chris's blockbuster trades. Yes, it did. And that's why it's a Watkins Wednesday. We get your thoughts on Chris's blockbuster trade.